Finally, Mies assigned an associate to build her a wardrobe. But to Edith, he was clearly becoming more interested in the house than he was in her. Their tiff over the closet soon became a very public debate of purity versus practicality and architect versus jilted client. You have to sympathize with Edith just a little.
You know, a person living in a house needs a place to hang their clothes. They need a closet. There are bugs outside. You need screens. How can you separate a work of architecture from the use to which that architecture is going to be put?
That didn't bother me. This is fundamentally a perfect abstraction, so to speak. Of course it's a beautiful residence, but it's a beautiful residence by virtue of his ignoring some of the things that most people would not be able to live without.
There's always those competing visions of, is it a pure work of art, or does somebody have to cook breakfast?
1951. After 3 long years of construction, the house was finally complete. But Mies and Edith were barely on speaking terms. Communication between the two now consisted mainly of cold, clipped, typewritten letters. No further financial commitments can be endorsed beyond the amount quoted in your statement of August 1st. Sincerely yours, Edith B. Farnsworth, M.D. The final cost, $73,000. Nearly double what they'd agreed on.
It all came to a head when she had told him to stop any more billing, that she didn't want to pay anymore. He sued her for the monies that she hadn't paid.
Not one to shrink from a fight, Edith countersued. And later she vented her rage to House Beautiful magazine in a biting editorial entitled "The Threat to the Next America." It appeared in April 1953.
Farnsworth was interviewed by a woman by the name of Elizabeth Gordon, who had published an article in which she said, there is a woman being obliged to live in this all-glass house, one room, done by an architect who treats her as if he were a dictator.
Gordon even compared the Farnsworth house to the looming threat of communism.
She said, if you can do without personal things, you're open for a dictator. If you don't have belongings, you're obviously a communist, right?
Edith may have won the media war, but Mies won the lawsuit in 1953. Yet he never again saw his creation. Before long, the new homeowner started to discover just how famous her house was.
Edith, she had some privacy issues living in a glass house, didn't she?
Yes, she did. The story has it that when she would go out of the bathroom, she'd look out the window and here's about 25 people aiming their cameras at
Tourists.
Tourists.
They would climb over the fence, they would come across the river on a boat from the park, and they would want to see this icon. As soon as it was created, it drew the world.
One such curious visitor was none other than Mies's own grandson, Chicago architect Dirk Lohan.
I was eager to see the Farnsworth house that I had only seen in pictures, and together with some friends from the architecture school, we drove out there one day.
But Lohan had a little trouble getting close enough for a good look.
Edith Farnsworth was in the house, and she took out her binoculars and followed us. And it was literally impossible to approach the house. She was going like this, and as we walked around this way, she was over there, following us.
After living in her so-called glass cage for nearly 20 years, Farnsworth put her controversial weekend house on the market in 1968. Dirk Lohan remembers sharing this news with his ailing grandfather.
We all thought it would be wonderful if he could be somewhere out in the country in nature, and I suggested to him, how about buying the Farnsworth house? But he wouldn't have anything to do with it.
After nearly 2 decades, the bad memories were still too strong for Mies.
Eventually, Edith did sell the house.
Mm-hmm. She sold the house to Peter Palumbo, who was a British developer who had, during his school years, seen a photograph of this house and fallen in love with it.
Palumbo, a British lord, took ownership in 1972, 3 years after Mies's death. He finally realized Mies's dream by furnishing the house as the architect intended, with the help of Dirk Lohan.
He asked me to fix it and maintain it, which for a number of years I did for him. He spared no expense. He wanted to do it right.
I think it's safe to say that he was the ideal tenant. He had the grounds redone. He took very good care of it.
But Palumbo couldn't protect the house from Mother Nature when the Fox River flooded in 1996.
Mies built the house several feet above the ground to keep it safe from floods.
Correct.
Not high enough, right?
It was an extraordinary flood, of biblical measure. 18 inches of rain fell on a 24-hour period.
Increased development along the Fox River left floodwater with no place to go but up.
Luckily, one of the windows broke and the water flooded into the house. That had not happened, the house would have risen with the water like a boat and been pulled out of the ground and maybe floated away.
Priceless artwork was sucked out through the broken window, never to be seen again.
It left a terrible film of mud all over the floor, destroyed all the furniture was there, the rugs that were there. It cost Palumbo $500,000 to restore it. 7 times what Edith Farnsworth paid for the house.
In 2003, the Farnsworth house made headlines yet again. Peter Palumbo was putting it up for auction with a projected price tag of $7.5 million.
Peter Palumbo decided that he had to sell the house. He was having health problems, financial problems. He wanted and needed a quick sale.
David Ballman is the president of Landmarks Illinois. He knew that a quick sale to the wrong kind of buyer might be a disastrous thing for preservationists like him. After a deal with the state to buy the house fell through, Ballman joined forces with Landmarks chairman Joe Antunovich, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and renowned philanthropist John Bryan.
I've just never seen anything more beautiful. There's just nothing that had more influence on the architecture of the 20th century than did the Farnsworth house, in my judgment.
Together, they hatched a plan to buy the Farnsworth house and turn it into a museum. But it wasn't going to be easy.
When we heard that the house was going to be sent to Sotheby's, we called Peter Palumbo immediately and made an offer. We actually made 2 offers, and they were refused by Peter.
The Illinois preservationists now had no other choice but to join the bidding war. But to win the Farnsworth house at auction, they'd have to raise an enormous amount of money in very little time.
When a property's being sold at auction, that's really bad for the preservationists, right?
It's very bad because you only have a few months to come up with the money to buy it if you intend to buy it. Generally, preservationists work on a much longer time frame.
Adding to the challenge, the group had some serious competition from private buyers.
We were going to go to that auction, buy the house, and run it as a public museum. But a real issue had emerged, which it became very clear that some of the buyers out there felt that this house was portable, that people were looking to basically throw it in the back of a U-Haul and take it to their home in Greenwich.
I feared very much that one of the super wealthy of our time would treat this as a transportable trophy piece of art.